Order. The Senate will have before it Senate Bill 2322. Madam Secretary.
Engrossed Senate Bill 2322, a bill for an act to amend and reenact subsection 10 of section 57 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to the excise taxes on tobacco products and the cigarette tax, and to repeal section 57 of the Century Code relating to the exemption from the tobacco tax for products given to the Veterans Home and the State Hospital. For the fiscal note indicates for the 15-17 biennium revenues to our general fund of $175,127,000.
Senator Carlisle.
Thank you, Mr. President. The front desk already explained the bill. It is a tax on cigarettes and other products, tobacco products. It will raise the cigarette tax up to $2. It'll raise $175 million. The merits of the bill can certainly be spoke for on the floor, but we had it down there strictly for the amount of money. The fiscal note in our committee voted 10-3, do not pass, and ask this body to agree with us. Thank you.
Senator Dotson-Rod.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. This bill, Senate Bill 2322, is the tobacco tax bill, and it was heard in the Senate Finance and Tax Committee. There was a very good hearing on this bill. The room was full. There were 10 witnesses that spoke in favor of the bill. There were 7 speaking against. We had one person that was neutral in testimony. On the sign-in board, there were 18 in favor and 9 against, and 2 signed in as neutral. And what the bill does is it increases the tax on cigarettes from 44 cents a pack to $2 a pack. It increases the tax on other tobacco products from 28% to 50% of the wholesale purchase price. It increases the excise tax on snuff from 60 cents per ounce to $2.72 per ounce. It increases the excise tax on chewing tobacco from 16 cents to 73 cents per ounce. When we had the hearing, there were those who spoke in favor of the bill, and that when they spoke, they were primarily talking about the health consequences and the costs of tobacco use. And they brought with them data and charts and statistics to support their position. And I won't try to get down into all the details of that. But those that came and testified in favor included the president of Tobacco Free North Dakota, Dr. Johnson from the UND School of Medicine. The American Cancer Society was there in favor, North Dakota Medical Association, the American Lung Association of North Dakota. The administrator of the Custer Health in Mandan presented a resolution that the Custer Health Board passed last year calling on North Dakota to raise cigarette tax to a minimum of $2 a pack. The Association of Counties were there, and they when they spoke in favor, they said that because they have as counties obligations to provide for public health, and they had some discussions among their leaders and the people around the state, that they decided that this was good and they wanted to speak in favor of it. The vice president for Bismarck Tobacco Free Coalition was there in favor, American Heart Association, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Dakota. And as I mentioned, each of these witnesses had handouts, they had data to support the position, and it really would be difficult to summarize and reduce all of that information into a few minutes here on the floor. But one point that was emphasized in the testimony that we heard is the importance of what they call the three-legged stool in preventing tobacco-related disease. And those 3 parts of that full program is a fully funded comprehensive tobacco prevention and control policy at the Center for Disease Prevention and Control recommended levels, and North Dakota has this. It is one of the 2 states that has this. They wanted the second item they need is a strong, smoke-free, clean indoor air law. North Dakota has this. And the third one was higher tobacco taxes, and North Dakota does not have this. We heard in testimony from the tobacco-free leader in the state that on average it costs about $10.48 in health care costs per pack of cigarettes. Our current tax is 44 cents a pack. Minnesota has recently released data on their increase in tobacco tax that resulted in a drop from about 18% youth smoking to about 10% youth smoking. So there was much more information, but it had a lot to do with health and the costs that are associated with tobacco use. Those speaking against the bill were mostly concerned about sales, and they expressed their view that the increase in tobacco tax could negatively impact their sales and their businesses. And those against included the North Dakota Petroleum Marketers. There was an owner there of OK Distributing, a regional manager of Infinite Vapor. She wanted smoking cessation products to be exempt. And the amendments we adopted for this bill provide that if the FDA has approved the practice and the product for tobacco cessation, they will be exempt from this bill. There was a company called Amcon Distributing there in opposition, Simonson gas station stores against, and the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce speaking against the bill. On your desk, I have handed out some pages of paper that are stapled together. And the first sheet of this is a copy of the Fargo Forum editorial. And I wanted you to see this because I thought for as long as our hearing went and as much as we heard, this fairly short editorial did a pretty good job of summarizing what is at stake here, what we think this bill is really about. And
got 10.
And you can see at the bottom of the first page there, it says in the final analysis, it comes down to what you want to save, sales or lives. So this editorial, I think, is a good way to really summarize a fairly long hearing. Page 2 of this handout has the county-by-county breakdown of the vote that we took in 2012 on prohibited smoking in public places. So if any of you are interested in the 53 counties we have in North Dakota, you can take a look on this and see how did your county or counties vote. And you look through the list, you can see on the bottom there's the statewide numbers of 66.67 in favor and 33.33 against. There was no county in the state that voted no. So if we had 53 in the Senate instead of 47, it would be as if that board up there on this measure was all green and there were no red votes. Of course, that was a vote then in 2012, and it was about a vote in smoking in public places. The next chart that's behind this county by county is the polling, the most recent polling that's been done, to show that the numbers that between strongly favor and somewhat favor amount to 69%, very, very close to the numbers that were obtained in the 2012 election. So I think what this does is shows that we have both historical data and fairly recent polling data that track very close to each other, very, very close. We could almost predict that any statewide election that would take place, that most every county it would pass, and it would almost certainly pass as a statewide measure. Now, if you vote on this and vote in favor, I think you can be almost certain that you are reflecting the views of the people back in your district, because we have this historic data that shows by county, and we have the polling data that shows that we're tracking pretty close on this measure as well. And of course, none of us who are elected here and serve here have to vote based on the wishes of the people back in our districts. We're free here to vote any way we want. And so just because we have pretty good evidence that the people back home want this, we are all here and have our own ideas, and we can vote as we choose. I think that one of the things that I think has created some bias and prejudice in our debate on this is the term tax and the term tax increase. I think we should be instead thinking about this in terms of a user fee, of the impacts, the cost to the healthcare system that are created by the use of tobacco are not covered by the fee that is charged and collected by the state at the time of this sale. It's estimated that the cost to the healthcare system caused by tobacco over the next biennium in North Dakota will be around $300 million. So even with the fiscal note that shows $175 million, even with the current revenue that we have of $50 million, we are still not generating the revenue that it would take to cover the impact that the use of these products have on our health care system.
Senator Dotson-Rod, you have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. I think I'm about near the end. The fees that users pay when someone crosses a toll bridge, we charge them a fee, and it's not normally thought of as a tax. It's a fee for that service. And when you get a hunting license, you are charged a fee, and it's normally not thought of as a tax, but it's a fee for the service. I've often thought that if we wanted to cover the costs created by the use of these tobacco products, there should be some fee that's charged for the user that helps the rest of us help pay, because the general public has to come up with the revenues to pay these costs that in the end we all have to pay for. So in the end, many of us see this as a health and saving lives issue, and would encourage the Senate to do what the committee did, as the committee vote was 4-3 in favor, and urge the Senate to support this bill.
5 seconds. Senator Lafine.
Mr. President, I was one of the no votes on this bill in committee, and almost all of the discussion in the committee revolved around the bad effects of smoking, and it's a bad deal and we shouldn't have it, and I'm right there with everybody else. I really don't like smoking. In fact, I'm allergic to smoke. But the bigger issue is it really the right place for tax policy to be regulating perfectly legal products in our state? I just think that's really bad policy for us to go down that road. I don't think tax policy is the place where we should be deciding if products are legal or not. I think this is a free country, and as long as products are legal and we have effectively pushed them out of harm to all other people, they should be legal, and we shouldn't be using tax policy to try and influence those decisions and make those decisions. I don't think it's the right committee to be making those decisions. The founder of this, one of the founders of this country, and the gentleman who wrote our Constitution, subscribed and stated over and over, the legitimate powers of government should extend only to such acts as are injurious to others. And I just don't think at this point anymore smoking is a harm to others and should be a freedom still allowed in this country. One can argue that the cost is spread out over all of us. It's very expensive. But I will argue that's another problem in code that should be fixed at that side rather than through tax policy.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Bekkedahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a member of the Finance and Tax Committee, I also heard all this information. Kudos to the presentations by two of my colleagues so far, because they're both correct. I stand here today asking you for your support from the public health standpoint as a healthcare professional, and the damage that this can do to our public, not just in terms of their health, but other health monetarily in terms of the cost to our financial systems in insuring and protecting and taking care of those people. I also take great care to talk about the areas of concern in our cessation programs which we have, which are top-notch, our areas with the quit line, which work very well. I think we're addressing those very good. But it's the area of the tax itself. Whether you like tax or don't like tax, taxes do affect purchases, which do affect starting smoking and how you continue that habit through your lifetime. So from a public health perspective and as a healthcare professional, I stand in support of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Elke.
Mr. President, I'm on that Finance and Tax Committee too, Mr. President, and I thought the senator from District 26 did a wonderful job explaining the details. The thing that I see about this tax bill is it is a way to get in the way of big tobacco. Big tobacco, Mr. President, has been using people, I feel, long enough. I had one person contact me and said, you know, When I was in World War II, the government gave me cigarettes in my C rations, and I should be able to smoke them now. Well, Mr. President, the government didn't give that person free cigarettes. Big Tobacco gave that person free cigarettes for their C rations in order to hook young 18 and 19-year-old young military men that were fighting for our country on nicotine so they could keep them smoking the rest of their living lives. Some of them happen to still be accidentally alive from that war. But, Mr. President, I've had C rations within the recent years, and they don't have cigarettes in them anymore. I can also tell you, Mr. President, that in the life insurance world, if you smoke, or if you chew, or if you have any trace of tobacco in your system, you pay a significantly higher premium for your life insurance. I wonder why that is. Because you're going to die sooner. And the insurance companies want to be able to make all the money they can off you while you're still alive to pay those premiums. Mr. President, I thought about talking about the cost of medical care that's already been covered. This addiction that people sometimes refuse to call an addiction, think, you know, maybe at one time we thought it was kind of cool to look like John Wayne. Oh, by the way, he died of cancer as he strode across the big screen and threw a cigarette and grabbed Maureen O'Hara and gave her a big wet kiss. She probably didn't think it was that fun to taste that tobacco either, but Mr. President, those cowboys that used to ride the range and smoke didn't smoke all day on the horse. They waited until they got to the end of the day and rolled one or two and had a puff, and that was it. They weren't dying of cancer. They were probably getting run over in a stampede, but at least they weren't dying of cancer. Cancer is a horrible way to go, Mr. President. Roughly 33 years ago today, my friend Kent died. A year and a half prior to that, he was on a fishing trip up in Canada, and he felt a little funny. So when he got home from his fishing trip, he went to the doctor. Now, Kent was 240 pounds, 6'2", virile, strapping young father of two, a new wife. Kent was quite a guy. In fact, he and I were partnering up. He had just gone to work for me. He was planning to be a partner in my business. And he went to the doctor, and they saw a spot on his lung. That was the day, Mr. President, that Kent quit smoking. A month or so later, they said, well, we're going to have some surgery, but we'll just be able to take part of your lung, Kent. Surgery happened a few days after that, and after surgery they said, well, we got in there and we had to take the whole lung. But we got everything, but we're going to give you some radiation treatments and some chemo and stuff just to be sure. Well, Mr. President, a year after that, when I got the call at home from his wife that Kent had died in the hospital bed, they had moved into his front room, my brother and I went over to take Kent out put him on the gurney and take him out to the ambulance after the coroner examined his body. And Kent was a shell of a man. I reached underneath and picked him up all by myself. He couldn't have weighed 80 pounds. Mr. President, Kent's kind of been haunting me ever since that day. And this is an opportunity for me to put my name on the line. I didn't want to put my name on this bill when it carried a fiscal note that sent all the money to our tobacco coalition because, frankly, they're swimming in money. They don't need it. But there are other things we could use this tax money for. Women's shelters across the state of North Dakota are needed severely. That's just one piece of the pie. Shoot, we could put some more money into our legacy fund if we wanted to from this apparent $175 million over the next biennium. Mr. President, there's a reason they call those cigarettes, jokingly in some cases, coffin nails or cancer sticks. Let's get in the way of big tobacco. This is a way for us to get in the way of big tobacco, slow them down. We can't slow them down any other way. They just keep pumping up the nicotine in the cigarettes, and now e-cigarettes. Are you kidding me? It's got the point of being ridiculous. Let's get in the way of big tobacco. This is one way to do it. Thank you.
Senator Armstrong.
Well, Mr. President, I'm not on the Finance and Tax Committee, but I'll just tell you, I think the purpose of a tax should be to provide money in order for government to fund basic services. These types of sin taxes are intended to stop bad behavior through the pocketbook, and I don't think social engineering should be accomplished through the tax code. And there's another point, and I think it's important. This is as clear a definition of a regressive tax as you can imagine. It's only going to harm lower income smokers. Prohibition by price isn't the best way to accomplish this. It forces people to spend more of their limited income on an addiction. And smoking rates are going down now across the country. Education is working. At this point, I think everybody's completely aware of the dangers and risks of smoking, and cheeseburgers and alcohol, and just about anything else if you pick up the paper. And I think this goes to my good friend from District 43. Where does this stop? Eventually, we're going to social engineer through the tax code, because this won't be the last one. And given North Dakota's current economic state, I'm not sure how I could justify voting for any tax increase, let alone one that increases the rate by over 350%.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, the question will be on the final passage of Senate Bill 2322. The Secretary open the key. Every member record their vote. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his or her vote? Secretary, close the key and take the tally. Tally reveals 17 senators voting yea, 30 voting nay. Senate Bill 2322 has failed. Next bill under consideration on the 11th order will be Senate Bill 2339. Madam Secretary.
Engross Senate Bill 2339.